Hi, and welcome to day 2 of Take 5. I'm Colin, and I'm here to take you through the book of Ruth. And today we're on Ruth chapter 2. And in yesterday's chapter, we saw how the family, Naomi and her daughters, tried to come back to Bethlehem from the land of Moabite. And Naomi told the two daughter-in-laws to say, go back to your families and your culture. And one daughter-in-law decided to go back, but Ruth decided to carry on with Naomi and said, your people will be my people, your God will be my God. And so now in chapter 2 we see them settling back into life in Bethlehem. Now Bethlehem is where Naomi comes from. And so there's lots of relatives, mainly distant relatives in the area. It's a small community, so that's not really surprising. So she's known of, people recognise her and don't bother her. But of course they've still got to make a living. They've still got to get some food from somewhere. But thankfully, at the time they settle is harvest time. And one of the laws laid down in the Israelite rule book is that when you harvest and you're chopping down your stalks of corn or whatever, barley or whatever it is, you shouldn't go back and then collect any missed stalks or dropped grain or anything like that. You shouldn't try and sweep through because anything that's left behind in the harvest is given over to the poor, those in need. It's a sort of welfare state provision. No one gave the widows any money, but this provision was laid down in Levitical law to say, come on guys, we've got to look after the widows and the less fortunate and the poor. This is a way of doing it. You're taking your harvest and you're leaving some behind for those in need. And so Ruth, hearing about these rules, or at least known about them, decides to take it upon herself to provide for Naomi and herself. And so she decides to go to the harvest fields and to spend hours and hours and hours of the day just going around picking up morsels of grain and stalks and anything she could find, just to gather enough together to provide for her mother-in-law and for herself. Now, introducing one of the other main characters in this story is Boaz. Boaz happens to own the field that Ruth ends up gleaning in. It's called gleaning, when you're gathering in after the harvests are gone. And Boaz is a distant relative of Naomi's. And his workers are working away, harvesting, and Boaz comes down and he checks on how the harvesting is going. And he notices this young Moabite girl gleaning away in the background. And he has a choice to make. He could choose to chase her off. He could choose to just let her get on with it. Or he could choose to engage with her in conversation, find out what's going on, why she's doing it, what's her situation. Well, he's very diplomatic, so he asks around, who's that woman, young lady who's gleaning in the background? I've never seen her before. And they explain that it's Naomi's daughter-in-law from Moabite. And so he recognises who Naomi is, and has actually heard of this character called Ruth, and has said, oh yeah, I've heard of her, she's done well, she's been looking after Naomi, and Naomi's a good character, and she seems to be of good character. Well, in that case, I will reward that character. I want to be generous, and I want to say, yeah, stay in my field, stay there, you can glean, there's no problem with that. I think this is an interesting chapter about character. The characters of these people that we encounter in the book of Ruth really matter. And they also matter to God, because they start bringing together, the storyline starts bringing together people of good character. And we'll find out why that's so important at the end of Ruth. However, at this stage, I think the challenge that I'd like to say to us today is, how do people see us? What type of character do they see in us? Do they see people of good character? Are we generous people? Are we hard-working people? Are we people that can be trusted? Are we people that we would go to for advice? What are we reflecting in our character that is godly? How much of God's character do people see through us? Many times I've heard the saying that we're the only Bible that some people read, or we're encouraged to be light in the world around us, salt that flavours the environment. Well, that all comes from character, and character is produced through the Holy Spirit's work in our lives. So today, maybe it's time to carry on inviting the Holy Spirit to change us and mould us and shape us so we can reflect Christ's character in this world. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.